Welcome back, degenerates. This is Locked In. I'm your host, Mason Cameron at PFF_Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta at Vishaal_Gupta95 on Twitter. V, it's week 5. We've got a bit of a goofy slate on our hands, a lot of weird injuries. Some teams are favored on the road that you might not expect to be favored in their current situations. How are you doing? How are you living? You ready to make some money?
Great. Like you said, it's definitely an interesting slate. I think if you looked at these games at the beginning, there's a lot of games that you thought were going to be a lot better. You thought you were going to get Joe Burrow versus Jared Goff. You thought you were going to get Lamar versus CJ Stroud. And it's not quite going to live up to what we were expecting. But, I think the slate, and we're a lot of chances to make money here. So should be a good week.
Yeah, it should be a good one. And, it started off with a pretty solid game in San Francisco, or excuse me, in LA. It felt like San Francisco considering how many Niners fans were there. But so let's start off with the Thursday night game. So for anybody that does not know how this show goes, we break down the Thursday night game, the betting implications from that, and then we head into our slate of picks for the week. We all pick out a few games. We're not going to touch on every single game. So if you do have any questions, make sure you hit us up over in Discord. That's how become a member at importantnonsense.com. That's how you get into our Discord, where you can ask us any of your questions. You can hit up the fantasy guys about all of your start and sits, all your trade requests, anything like that. And of course, we just brought back roster resolutions for a small fee. You can have the guys give you a tailored approach on exactly what you need to do in order to win your league. So make sure you guys go ahead and get in on that. And so first and foremost, we are going to be checking out the Thursday night game. And V, this one was a bit of a shock to me. It was a little bit crazy. San Francisco heads into LA. And like I said, it felt like a home game for San Francisco. They traveled really well. To be honest, it's a little disappointing that the Rams have troubles filling up their own stadium with fans with home fans. It's a little disappointing because they're really good. They're a good team, and this is a team that won a Super Bowl not that long ago. So you would think that there would be some enjoyment there and some momentum, but it's just really not carrying over. And San Francisco, obviously, they're traveling well. They're playing well despite all the injuries and everything that's happening to them right now. And frankly, it's something that I talked about, but Kyle Shanahan has had this Rams team number for a while. I think the number was that the Rams were 2-7 against the spread as favorites while in LA, which is, that's not a great look here. But so into the particulars for this one. The San Francisco 49ers win this game 26-23. They win outright and cover. They close at plus 8.5. This game started out early in the week at around 3.5 points, depending on where you were shopping. And it quickly spiraled to 5.5, 6.5. And by the time it closed, it was about 8.5 points. This game also went over the game total at about 44 is where I thought it closed at. It looks like Betting Pros they might be a little bit mixed up here with what lines they're listing here, because I do not believe it was at 47 last time I checked. But V, it was interesting. Like I said, San Francisco banged up. No Purdy, no Pearsall, no Jennings. And that comes after having obviously no Kittle, no Ayuk, Bosa just going down for the season. Everything's sort of swinging away from the 49ers being this great team. And here they stand at 4-1, massive underdog win. They came out swinging 14-0. Rams didn't score until late in the second quarter. Kendrick Bourne, monster game for Kendrick Bourne, 10 for 142. Mac Jones looked incredible. And, that's always an interesting thought, because it's something like we've talked about. There was those reports where John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan didn't really agree on the quarterback they were going to take during that Trey Lance trade. They ended up landing on Trey Lance, passing on Mac Jones. You know, it seems like now it's swung the other direction. Mac Jones is playing really well in this offense. And, credit to the Rams, though. They stormed back. They had a chance to take the lead late in the game. Kyron Williams, though, essentially got punched in the face and the ball. Goal line fumble on first down, which is the hardest part, is that was first down. They had many more downs to go and, just coughed that one up. Luckily, they got the ball back with about 40 seconds left, and Matthew Stafford has ice in his veins. He is absolutely lethal. Leads the drive. They get the field goal to go force overtime. And again, of course, San Francisco, they stood up on defense with that fourth down stop. Frankly, it was not a great play call by Sean McVay. He alluded to that as well in the post-game press conference. I had some concerns where I thought that this Rams team last season, they really got away from, what we've known from this scheme for a long time with like outside zone runs and zone looks, things like that. They went to a lot of gap man schemes, and then they started to swing that back in the other direction. They played a lot of outside zone early in the year, and then just didn't really see that at all in this game, which is a concern because San Francisco had really struggled to stop outside zone. Kyron Williams had actually been one of the highest graded running backs on outside zone plays. And one of the reasons I'm particularly touched about that is because I took Kyron Williams over 66 and a half rushing yards. And for him to fumble on the 2-yard line with 65 yards was it was a brutally bad beat. It was a tough break there for myself. But V, what did you see in this San Francisco match, or this Thursday night matchup?
Yeah, for me, the story in this game is definitely both quarterbacks. I mean, Mac Jones, what he did coming in injured and just playing through it, and just I thought that hit he took when he went down was like a season ender. That's what it looked like. He was clutching his calf. You're like, oh my god, it's another Achilles. He's not going to come back this year, and he just bounced back up and he continued playing. And yeah, he was terrific. I mean, when your top receivers are Demarcus Robinson and Kendrick Bourne, and you're still putting up 300 plus yards and multiple scores and not turning the ball over, that's an unbelievable performance. Super gritty job by him. So very impressive. He's probably earned himself a good chunk of money going into the offseason with how he's played in his limited starts this season. And then Stafford continues doing what Stafford does. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. That throw in overtime where he spins and hits Atwell all the way down the field is just incredible stuff for somebody, even somebody half his age doing that would be incredible. For him to be at his age right now and still doing those kind of things. Super, super impressive. So these two teams are going to be very fun to watch. I expect both of them to be in the playoffs once we hit January. I would like to see a little bit more balance probably out of the Rams. Like, I don't know if this passing volume is sustainable. Stafford's not a young guy. Adams is not a young guy. Nakua's usage is just completely off the charts. And, he's been banged up already a couple times in his short career so far. So you don't want him to, get overly used up this early in the season. So curious to see what they do if they can figure something out there. But either way, phenomenal game, phenomenal Thursday night matchup, and excited to see these guys go up against each other again later in the season, and maybe for a third time once we hit January. It's very possible because, yeah, both teams are very, very good.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things that I'm right there with you. I do get concerned that this Rams team gets into a one-dimensional phase when they really don't have to. The game can be, relatively close. Now, I understand that San Francisco sort of pulled out there and put up 14 right off the rip, and they had to sort of answer, but it isn't a great look, especially when we talk about, there was concerns with Stafford's back early in the year, and I know that he's a tough dude. Like, we've talked about his toughness for years and years, but at a certain point, like, something's got to give, and he's gonna eventually crumble if he keeps, having to drop back and become one dimensional, and defenses can pin their ears back and rush him the way that, they can't afford that because they're just not good enough up front. One of the other spots that I was IDing was actually Bryce Huff versus Rob Havenstein. And that's, he's been sort of a weak link for a pretty poor pass protecting offensive line. And it's not like the Niners are that potent of a pass rush without Nick Bosa. So this is one of those things that it's going to be a crucial piece to their success that they remain balanced and they run the football. So, it's going to be something worth seeing. And for, Puka, he is phenomenal and he is having an incredible start to the season. I know that my guys, Dalton Wasserman, Trevor Sikkema, they were talking about, his odds for offensive player of the year, his odds for MVP and things like that. And, it sort of cut the odds in half, but he was surrounded by players that frankly, he had no business being surrounded by. He needed to be way higher up on that list, and he's been incredible. He is on pace to break some records potentially if he continues to, like you said, stay upright. He's had some injuries, and it is going to involve them getting him into better looks and not just, coaxing with a ton of volume. So he's incredible. This offense is still very strong. This defense is still very strong. I do have some concerns at cornerback. It's something that they had early on in the season last year. Obviously their front seven is very strong. Size at cornerback is going to end up becoming a problem for this Rams team. They do get sort of bullied by some of these receivers. Not even like we saw it happen with AJ Brown. It's like, yeah, AJ Brown's a big guy. Of course, he's going to bully some of these smaller corners. But now we're seeing it happen with guys like Kendrick Bourne, where Kendrick Bourne's not necessarily the biggest receiver out there. He's not small, but that's one of those things that is a concern to say the least. But anyway, a great game to start off the slate. And, frankly, we're going to run into a few little bit weirder games, maybe not quite as, watch worthy down in the slate. There's a couple of stinkers on our slate here, but, like any good stinker, you can make some money off of it as well. And the first one we're heading into is going to be one of those games that might not show up a ton on Red Zone this Sunday, but it's one that I'm liking as a strong underplay here. We have the Giants taking on the Saints in New Orleans. The Saints are about 1.5 to 2-point favorites here. Game total on this one, 42.5 points. And like I said, I am liking the under. And the big reason why is because of how good this Giants pass rush has been. It's something that I talked about on the PFF betting show this morning. This is one of my favorite bets of the week. And the big reason why is that pass rush and how it affects the game when they're really clicking. Now, granted, the Chargers are really banged up on the offensive line. It looks like Joe Alt's probably going to be missing quite a bit of time, no Rashawn Slater. And that is troubling. Like, that is an issue for that Chargers team. And that's something we'll talk about a little bit later. But kudos to the Giants pass rush. Abdul Carter had an absolutely phenomenal game breakout. I think their knockdown percentage was something like 16%. It was like the best on the week. So absolutely phenomenal there. And where that concerns me is that the Saints offense this offensive line, I know that they've spent quite a few early picks on the offensive line, but they haven't really been playing quite up to that potential. Now, it's definitely not a unit that's as bad as they were last year, which was among the bottom of the NFL. But this team isn't really good enough right now to fall behind in games. And that's sort of what we've seen in their ability to play, at least last week. They kept this game close versus the Bills because they ran the ball well. And when we look at what this game was, like last week, this was a 3-point game with 9 minutes left against the Buffalo Bills in the New Orleans Saints. They really stuck in there, and then the Bills ended up exploding down the stretch and putting up 10 more to really slam the door shut. But like I said, this Saints team, they want to run the ball. When they're trailing by 3 or less points, they have a 45.5% run rate. That's among the top half of the NFL. They're 5th in PFF rushing grade as a team, and that's because Kendre Miller's been playing well. That's because Alvin Kamara's been playing well. And that's something we're going to need to see from them. I know that I was very harsh on this Saints team coming in, but I've actually been like quietly impressed by how they've been able to stick in some of these games. Now, I know they got blown out by the Seahawks a couple weeks ago, and that's sort of how things are going to go. They're not quite good enough. Some games are going to be blowouts. Others are going to be able to keep close. It's going to be a bit of a surprise, here and there. But I do like what this team can accomplish if they can establish the run and really control games. Keep games out of the hands of the other offense, especially high-powered offenses like we saw with Josh Allen. And you know what? Shout out to Spencer Rattler. He's been much improved. He has been much improved. Now, he's not, gonna blow the doors off of anybody. We're not gonna be, shouting Spencer Rattler's name from the rooftop because he's, taking down the Giants, not the Giants, the team, but like Giants, like great teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
But I've been quietly impressed with, as much as they're an 0-4 team, I've been quietly impressed with how well they've stuck around with some of these teams. And then when we look at the Giants just beat the Chargers, man. Like, if you can beat the Chargers, I know that it's not a great matchup there for them. But like I said, when we saw how good that pass rush was, it actually affects the game so much in terms of that made life easier on their coverage unit, which their coverage unit had not been good. And then they suddenly looked much more manageable in terms of playing against an offense like the Chargers, who had been passing pretty well to start the year. So, something that I'm going to like to see. And now, obviously we have to talk about with the Giants offensively, quarterback change. I don't know. Dart, I know that, there's some buzz and some hype, and everybody was really excited to see him come out, win that first game. I know it came against a Chargers defense that we talked about. They're a strong unit. That's not really a defense that you want your young quarterback going up against. I mean, most of his damage came on the ground. He really did not impress through the air. I think he had like 111 yards. So really something that's forgettable. And he's going to need to be better through the air. Now that's going to be even more difficult with no Malik Neighbors, which, I mean, we have this conversation about the turf every single year, and it just continues to eat some dudes up every single year. And I don't know when it's going to change, but something probably needs to. But when we talk about where this Giants team is strong, it's not through the air. It hasn't been through the air to start the year. It's been on the ground. Cam Scatterboo is playing very, very well. He is strong. He's a bruiser. He brings the pain. Highest graded running back in the NFL. And I like what this team can potentially do if they continue to force the issue on the ground and play strong defense. That will put them into positions to win games. But long story short, where we're getting on this under is we're going to see two teams that really, really want to run the ball. And I think that 42.5 is just a touch too high. I see this game being somewhere closer to 20-13, or I hope it's a little more interesting than like a 17-10 type game. But, and another note on that one is you can still get Cam Scatterboo at plus 4,500 for offensive rookie of the year. And I know that there's a lot of good rookies out there. But this guy, Cam Scatterboo, is going to be getting a lot of touches as the year goes on. So that's going to be something we're sprinkling in on. V, are you seeing anything in this matchup as well?
Yeah, that's probably going to be on my card as well this weekend. I think definitely liking the under in this game. Last week, plenty of opportunities for that game to go over. Giants had a couple interceptions that put their offense in phenomenal field position inside the red zone, and still the game went under. That just tells you, like, as hyped as some people might be about Jackson Dart, it's not like this offense was overly explosive. He had the nice drive to start the game where he went all the way up and down the field. But other than that, there wasn't anything super, noteworthy in terms of offensive explosion or efficiency that would lead you to think that there's going to be lots of points coming from that offense right now, especially like you said, with Neighbors going down. There's just not a lot going on in that passing game. And then the Saints, similar situation. There's a very tough defense to go up against. There's going to be guys in Rattler's face all game long. So I don't expect much success from either team's passing game, meaning there's going to be a lot of running the ball. That's going to be a slower game script. So, yeah, I just don't see a ton of points here. I think we're going to be settling for a lot of field goals, a lot of long drives, a lot of time coming off the clock. This might be like the first game that finishes in the early window just because of how the game script goes. So, yeah, definitely going to take the under. Probably shouldn't be anywhere over 40 in this game. Should be in the 30s or lower. So I'll take the under.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because we see like there are multiple games on this slate that are 40 or under. The Vikings and Browns game in the international window, it's 36. It's a 36-point spread. This is like, when we were taking the Broncos to go under a whole bunch, last year, a couple years ago, even those games, we didn't see too many 36s. We saw some 38s, we saw some 39s, but 36s, that's a very low number. So 42, I'm more than happy to take the under on that. So The next game on the slate is actually one of those games that has a 40-point game total here. We have the Houston Texans heading into Baltimore to take on the Ravens. And the Texans are 1.5-point favorites here. Game total on this one, 40.5 points. And I mean, what can be said about this game? Baltimore opened roughly about 5.5 points on Monday morning. We
I
get
think it was more. I think it was closer to 10.
Was it? It's
I saw it at like 9.5. I think in some places to start. That might have been like a look ahead line before the game against the Chiefs even finished. Maybe that's what I was looking at.
that might have been it, but you're 100% correct. Is that it was big. It was big coming into last week too, and now we're seeing it having swung all the way towards the Houston Texans, and I mean I'm sure V, you're going to talk about all of the injury reports, but
Yeah.
one thing that we do have to say is it looks like no Lamar Jackson. A bunch of the defense is hurt,
Already ruled out. Yeah.
already ruled out. So, what are you seeing in this one, V?
Yeah, I don't know how you can't take Houston in this game. Just so many injuries for Baltimore. It's pretty unbelievable. Players who've already been ruled out in this one: Lamar Jackson, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Awuzie at cornerback, and then Kyle Hamilton listed as questionable right now. He has DNP the last 2 days, and then Ronnie Stanley is also listed as questionable on the offensive line. He was able to participate in practice on a limited basis the last couple of days. It looks like he could play, but so many injuries. And obviously, Lamar is the big one. But even if Lamar was playing, I mean, this game should probably be closer to a toss-up just given how they were playing. I mean, this Baltimore team has been struggling this season, even when those guys were healthy, especially the last 2 weeks starting on defense. They are giving up the most points per game in the NFL at 33.3 points per game. We're talking about the Baltimore Ravens, known as one of the best defensive teams in league history, and they're giving up the most points right now. Obviously, they've gone up against some really good offenses. They played the Bills, they played the Lions, they played the Chiefs. So, man, they have been getting manhandled defensively in all of those games. It's tough to see. Lamar, one of the crazier stats of the season through 4 weeks is Lamar has the highest sack percentage in the NFL right now at almost 14%. This is one of the most elusive, most slippery players the league has ever seen. And I don't know what happened, but the Lions defense figured something out because they were able to get him down a whole bunch on Monday night a couple weeks ago. And then the Chiefs followed it up last week with a bunch of sacks against him. And he's been sacked 15 times so far, second only to Cam Ward. And that's a tough sign. Now you put in Cooper Rush back there, and you have to go up against a Houston Texans defense that ranks in the top 10 in sacks with guys like Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on both edges. Like, I don't know, man. This is going to be a long, long game. This is a Baltimore offense that was already struggling with Lamar. Now you take him out and replace him with Cooper Rush. I just don't see how they're going to be able to do anything offensively. You don't really like what you've seen too much from Houston's offense so far through 4 weeks. Obviously, they had a nice bounce back last week, but that was against a easy matchup in Tennessee. But again, like I said, this Baltimore defense has not been good, so maybe we could see some good things from this Houston offense too in this week. I don't know. It's just tough situation all around for Baltimore. I don't know how you can take any, like, you're getting 1.5 CJ Stroud versus Cooper Rush. Like, that's a slam dunk. You have to take that every day of the week. No questions about it. Don't have to look any further than that. Just got to take it at below 3 when you get a chance like this.
Yeah, and I will say I wanted to take the under in this game also. I really thought long and hard about it just because, we've seen the Texans issues in terms of scoring.
They're not hitting over all season, so they're 0-4 towards the under.
And it's crazy because, I'm looking at it and, it looks like they, dominated a pretty poor Titans team. And, the Titans have been relatively okay. They're sort of middle of the road in terms of defensive, success rates. But I mean, obviously offensively, they've just been atrocious. And when we look at this game that they played last week, the Texans, it was 6-0 going into the fourth quarter. And then the Texans turned it on, which is one of those things.
Texans did not get into the red zone until the fourth quarter. I think maybe the Titans hadn't either, but the first time the Texans got into the red zone against the Titans at home in Houston was in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and
that's
so
tough.
It's a tough look, but I'm still behind you on where you have to just say, like, this Ravens defense, it is worse. Is significantly worse than the unit that we saw against the Titans or against the Titans defense. And so when we talk about that, I think this defense was already bad. And it's tough because they have a bunch of really good players on that defense. And no Matabuke, who is obviously out for the season now. You're talking about no Kyle Hamilton, who had a limited practice and then must have suffered a setback because he had 2 DNPs in a row. So that's a tough look. He is their best player, not only on their defense, but one of the best players, defensive players in the NFL. And they're going to be without him. Roquan Smith, who, has been a little touch and go, but frankly, he's still a really, really strong player. And I mean, you're going from one of the worst defense in many, many metrics and taking away a ton of really crucial pieces, and then also going, okay, you're also not going to have Lamar Jackson. That is a worrisome feat for anybody. Now, granted, Cooper Rush absolutely dusted this Houston defense when they played last year against the Cowboys. He had 35 of 50 or 34 of 55 for 354 yards and a touchdown. So it's slightly, the over sort of slightly concerned me in terms of why I moved away from the game total on this one, but I'm right there with you. I think the Texans -1.5. This game could have probably been 2.5 or even 3, and I probably wouldn't have batted an eye. This Baltimore Ravens team is not very good right now. And, frankly, to their credit, though, they have played an absolute murderer's row of teams to start the season. Bills, obviously they had the Browns, where the Browns aren't great, but the defense really kept them in that game. I know the game ended 41-17, but it was a lot closer heading into the fourth quarter. So this is one of those things, and like you said, the Lions really figured something out against them. It looked like the Chiefs figured out something against them. Another play that I really like in this game is actually Woody Marks to go over 2.5 receptions, because something that we've seen is that this Baltimore Ravens team has really, really struggled to check running backs in the receiving game. And Stroud has been using the running backs, and Woody Marks in particular, to help mitigate some of the pressure that he's feeling up front with their terrible offensive line. So I really like him to potentially go over. Right now, Baltimore does not have the guys to play as much man coverage as they are. And, we saw it last week. The Chiefs really picked them apart with some designed passes to the running back. They had a few screens. I know Pacheco dropped one that probably would have gone for 40. And then, they tried to get Brashad Smith, involved. And I think that this Ravens defense, their problems run deep right now. I don't think they have the pass rush right now to really hurt a Texans offense that has struggled in pass protection. So it's going to be a tough ride for them, but I'm right there with you. Houston -1.5. The next game on our schedule here, I don't know how I lucked out in order to get this game at 6.5. You guys can go get this game right now at 6.5 at FanDuel. FanDuel is the only book that has not moved this to 7. I would take it at 7. I think they're probably going to win by 10, but I'm more than happy to take it under the key number of 7. What we're seeing is the Raiders heading into the Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Colts, like I said, -6.5, -7, depending on where you're shopping. Game total on this one, about 48 points, and I'm all over the Colts at -6.5. What is there to say about Vegas right now? I liked what they could potentially have become. They are struggling mightily in way too many facets. I like Geno Smith, but this is a tough look for them right now. They've dropped 3 straight games against the spread. And when we look at this Colts team, they are real. They're 3-1 against the spread, and it could have been 4-0 against the spread if A.D. Mitchell had not fumbled a would-be touchdown through the end zone for a turnover, and if Tutu Atwell hadn't had a miraculous 85-yard touchdown late. They'd be looking at potentially 4-0 straight up and 4-0 against the spread. So I am all in on this Colts team. I'm probably going to continue to bet them about every single week that I can. And like I said, I'm very, very concerned about Geno right now. He's fearless. You've got to be fearless, but it's coming up in some bad spots right now. He has 2 games with 3 turnover-worthy plays, and he really, really struggled against a Bears secondary that has been atrocious to start the year. And when we talk about bad, they don't have any of their corners. It's been a really, really tough look for them, and for them to do what they did to Geno, I'm out. I'm out on the Raiders right now. I know that Ashton Genty sort of had that bounce back game a little bit, and the game ended up being closer with that Bears team. Blocked field goal, but at the same time, like it maybe shouldn't have been that close. We had Max Crosby play the game of his life. He tipped the ball to himself and had an interception. So like I think they're getting good play out of some spots. The play they're not getting great out of is the secondary as a whole. They're not getting great play out of Geno, and the offensive line is going to be wishy-washy every single week. So I am out on whatever the Raiders are going to be able to do. They're going to have to show a lot more. Now they're going to have to come out and play a really good game in order for me to sort of get back in on them in some spots, but this isn't going to be one of them against the Colts. I think 7 is potentially too low. This game needed to probably be at 7.5. Now, I understand that one of the concerns is that Xavier Howard retired sort of in the middle of the week of practice. And that's probably going to make it so we see a lot more of Mekhi Blackman. It's a bit of a concern because he's the one that gave up. Mekhi is the one that gave up that 85-yard touchdown to Tutu. So, I mean, he got tripped up. Those plays are a little bit fluky. I think they can
He
potentially.
also had 10 guys on the field on that one too, so that was
Yeah.
also like not his fault.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things that it's like, but Shane Steichen, man, he's calling this offense. He's in his bag. I'm riding with the Colts in this one. V, are you seeing anything in this game potentially?
One big injury to note on this one, Brock Bowers looks like he could miss this one. I don't know if he was a DNP or if he was just limited today, but it's concerning so far that his injury status so far this week. So it looks like there's a good chance he's not even going to play in this one. Even when he's been out there, he's obviously not been 100%. That's been a big, I think, key and a big reason why this passing game has not looked very good for the Raiders. But more importantly, it's just Geno Smith. I don't know what he's doing right now. I mean, they have guys, they should be able to do something a little bit more than what we've seen. Trey Tucker had a nice 3-touchdown game a couple of weeks ago. Jacoby Myers is a super underrated receiver. Ashton Genty is a very capable receiver out of the backfield. I mean, then you still have even 70% of Brock Bowers is still a phenomenal player. So there should be a lot more from this offense than what we've been seeing. So it's definitely disappointing so far. And yeah, you just need to see it. You need to see Geno play a more competent game, a full game where he's not making these kind of mistakes and taking care of the ball before you can really trust the Raiders or bet on them or anything like that. So totally feel you taking the Colts. Could be another monster Jonathan Taylor game in this one. We saw what the Commanders were able to do on the ground a couple of weeks ago. I think it was McNichols had that monster run at the end of the first half. Now you have to go up against arguably the best back in the league right now in Jonathan Taylor. It could be a long day for this Raiders defense. And then again, you just don't trust their offense. So totally fair to take the Colts in this one.
Yeah, and one of the most concerning things is that it falls on Geno. Like we can blame like the offensive line and the pressure and stuff like that, but at the same time, like
those 3 picks last week had nothing to do with pressure.
Nothing had nothing to do with And the thing is too is like we look back to last year and like the Seahawks offensive line was not good. Like debatably worse than the unit that the Raiders are wheeling out there right now. And the Raiders have been very bad on the offensive line. So, but at the same time, like you just said, it's not coming down to pressured dropbacks or why he's throwing these picks. He's throwing them on his own accord right now, or why he's throwing these bad balls. So it's one of those things that I mean, we're gonna have to see a lot more from the Raiders. I mean, as much as I am in on the Colts and like I'm gonna be tailing the Colts in a lot of games this year, I'm just as much out on the Raiders as I am in on the Colts right now.
Yeah, totally fair.
And I love your read on this one, V. This is going to be a barn burner. We have the Dallas Cowboys favored on the road as 1.5-point favorites heading into New York to take on the Jets. Game total on this one is 47.5 points. V, tell me which way you're leaning.
Yeah, gonna take the over. I think I'm gonna be tailing overs involving games with the Cowboys or the Jets, and they just so happen to be playing against each other this week. So that's a double over for me on this one. These are 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL right now. Dallas allowing the second most points in the league at 33 points per game. Jets allowing the 4th most at 30 points per game. Dallas has just 2 takeaways this season. The Jets have zero. I'll say that again. The New York Jets through 4 weeks have zero takeaways. Pretty unbelievable. The Cowboys have just 5 sacks on the season. The Jets have 6, both ranking the bottom 10. Dallas ranks in the bottom 10 in passing yards allowed per game. Jets rank in the bottom 10 in rushing yards allowed per game. It's just bad, bad all around for both defenses. Now you have two offenses who are pretty solid. I mean, Dallas really, really good last week. They looked phenomenal. Dak was incredible even without CD playing. He's second in the league in passing yards per game. And that Dallas rushing attack, I think, has been a lot better than most people were expecting heading into the season. They ranked 12th in the league at 123 rushing yards per game. The Jets have a really good rush offense. They're third in the NFL at 144.5. Their passing game hasn't been great or anything like that, but Garrett Wilson has definitely returned to form. He has been outstanding so far this season. Had a great touchdown catch last week. Should have had a second one. I don't know what that offensive pass interference call was. That was complete nonsense. He didn't do anything. He should have had a 2-touchdown game last week. He's been really good. So, yeah, I just don't know why anybody would take the under in this game. Neither defense knows what they're doing, and both offenses are good enough to put up points when they're playing against subpar defenses. So give me the overall day on this one.
Yeah, and when we talk about this Dallas secondary, they're 28th in coverage grade, they're 32nd in open target percentage, they're 31st in yards per coverage target, they're 31st in successful play rate allowed. Name a metric, they're probably in the bottom 5 of it. And this is something that I talked about on the PFF betting show today. And I really actually like same game parlay leans towards Justin Fields overs. I mean, you can get Justin Fields plus 250 plus passing yards, Garrett Wilson to have 100 receiving yards, and another little tidbit that I'm liking here is Justin Fields 2+ anytime touchdowns, which is the real kicker here for this one. Is like when we look at some of these quarterback performances against this Dallas defense, and now granted, all these quarterbacks I'm about to list have maybe a little bit more passing ability than Justin Fields, but at the same time, 250 is not a high number. Justin Fields is more than capable of hitting that. But we have, Jalen Hurts in week 1. I mean, he didn't throw the ball pretty much at all. They were hesitant to throw the ball. He ran the ball 14 times, but he had 152 passing yards, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns, especially near the goal line, which is where I think that Justin Fields potentially has that ability to get to anytime touchdowns, because
especially with Braylon Allen going out for a long time.
Exactly. No Braylon Allen. I think they're going to get some designed runs there. And of course, he gets a little gun shy when they get into passing situations near the goal line. And I think that you could definitely see him tucking and running and getting into the end zone a few times there. But when we go to some of these other performances for quarterbacks, it gets abysmal. 450 and 3 touchdowns for Russell Wilson. 298 and 4 touchdowns for Caleb Williams. This came off of the back of pretty much everybody on Twitter showing 3-minute long videos of Williams just missing throws left and right, open guys, and he came out and just blew the doors off this Dallas defense. And then Jordan Love, I mean, is shootout. I mean, I didn't expect a shootout like that. And I mean, we're going to have to eventually talk about this Packers team, but 337, 3 touchdowns. I mean, when we can get into some of the coverage schematics. I don't want to dive too deep into the weeds. If you guys want to see more of my breakdown on that, definitely head over to PFF on YouTube and check out the betting show that we talked about. But it's been pretty bad there, and I think that these are more than reachable numbers. And I mean, Garrett Wilson, friend of the show. I mean, not really, because he hasn't ever been on the show. But Garrett, you ever want to come on the show? Like I said, you have the standing invite. We're big fans, and he's been playing phenomenal. I mean, he has been just a shade away from 100 in 3 of 4 games this season, and I really like his potential to go over that in this one. And I mean, the Jets defense is I mean, we know what Dallas is able to do offensively, which is impressive, considering that, they have no CeeDee Lamb. But really, I think the big thing is Dak. Dak has been incredible, especially under pressure. Like, their offensive line is not that good. Their offensive line is, the nice way of saying it, struggling. And he's actually throwing better under pressure than a lot of people. Like, he has the highest PFF passing grade under pressure. So I've been highly impressed with what Dak is doing. you can go and get Dak for comeback player of the year at plus 400. And I really like his potential to continue that. Now, granted, it might come down to their ability to win a few more games, especially ones like this on the road against a Jets team that has been pretty abysmal. But hey, it's not Dak's fault. Dak is playing really well. And I like where your read is at 47.5. Like, I mean, this game could have been 49. This is
Yeah.
too low.
Just see what happened last week. Jets had multiple long drives that ended in fumbles that you felt like totally tanked the over, and yet their defense was so bad and their offense was just good enough in the second half where you were able to go up and hit that over, and they would have hit over 47.5 too. So if they were able to do it in last week's game where things kind of went south in a lot of places, imagine what they could do if they don't turn the ball over like that. It could easily go over 50. I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't even bat an eye, right? Yeah, exactly. So, I love your read on that one. And, on to the next game here. We're not going to spend too much time on this one, V. I played around with the idea for a long, long time. And I just ended up having to pull the trigger. I think it's too much value right now. You got the Miami Dolphins. They are minus 1.5 point favorites on the road. Yes, you heard that correct. The Miami Dolphins are favored on the road against the Carolina Panthers. I don't think any other team in the league they could be favored on the road against, and it definitely has to be Carolina. Game total on this one is 44.5, and that is where we're targeting. We're going over. This is going to be an ugly game. This isn't exactly an endorsement of either offense. It is what it is. Yeah. I think that they've shown enough flashes. I know that Bryce Young is getting a lot of flack. Bryce Young still has a really, really good receiver in Ted McMillan who can take over a game. And when he's not shooting himself in the foot, he can deliver the ball to his guy. They're going to need to run the ball a little bit. I think it's Rico Dowdle is going to be starting if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Chuba's been ruled out for this one already.
Yeah, so, and I mean, Rico is a reasonable running back. He really started getting going at the end of last season, so I'm not super afraid from that, especially because the Dolphins can't stop the run. Dolphins can't really stop anything, and neither can Carolina.
Nothing at all.
And that's why the crux of this over is 44.5 points and why I'm comfortable taking it. It's because they're ugly on defense. I know that there's no Tyreek Hill because he shattered his leg. And I mean, we can talk about, I've never seen a reaction like that. I know people have been calling it gutsy, but I've never seen somebody stoked that they shattered their leg. And Tyreek Hill was without a doubt the happiest person in that stadium after he broke his leg. Anyway, so an incredibly odd situation there, but they got Darren Waller, and Darren Waller actually played really well. I had to eat crow on Darren Waller. I took under 11.5 yards because I was like, well, what's his role going to be? He's 33. He's been out of the league for a year.
I'm surprised he even had a line set for him. He was one of those guys that you feel like is so far below on the depth chart that he won't even, be involved at all.
Right. And he ran eight routes. He ran 8 routes and had 4 targets, 3 catches for like 27 yards. And was it 2 touchdowns?
I think 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, if they have a weapon like that in the red zone, I feel a little bit more comfortable. I mean, Jalen Waddle, he's sort of had a bit of a setback. I know Tua hasn't really played that well. I don't really think that matters against this Carolina defense. They have not been good. When we talk about Carolina in general, and both of these defenses, just in terms of PFF defensive grade as a whole, Carolina 29th, Miami 32nd. But when we look at Carolina specifically, wow. I don't think I've seen a team as bad in a lot of these metrics as the Carolina Panthers are right now. They are 32nd in EPA per play allowed. They are 32nd in successful play rate allowed. They are 32nd in touchdown percentage allowed. It is not a great look in Carolina right now. There's not a lot of, excitement. I read something today that a long time, Panthers fan broadcast podcast.
I saw that.
Yeah, they'd had enough and they hung up shop. They canceled the show for the rest of the season.
You get a 40 burger dropped on you by the Patriots, I guess you can understand.
Yeah, and I understand that, that they shut out Atlanta a couple weeks ago and put 30 on them. I think that was more on Atlanta just really tipping
Yeah.
pitches, not being creative on offense. It more came down to Atlanta losing and just shooting themselves in the foot and probably playing the worst game we've ever seen from them versus Carolina actually being for real on defense because they have been absolutely atrocious on defense. Like I said, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with this one. Two really bad defenses, offensive capability just enough to go over this 44 and a half yard line or this 44 and a half point line. V, are you seeing anything in this one?
Nope, same thing here. It's probably going to be in my card as well this weekend. Probably going to be a huge HN game. Could be the breakout game for Ted McMillan in this one. Get his first career touchdown in this one. Wouldn't be surprised there. Yeah, I just nothing's going to happen with either defense. Nobody's playing well. Nobody's playing well in the secondary. Just points everywhere, yards everywhere. Yeah, should be not too much of a difficult over in this one.
Yeah, it might be one you see a lot on Red Zone and not for the right reasons.
No.
All right, the last game on our slate here. We have the Commanders heading into LA to take on the Chargers. A lot of traveling here there for them. -2.5 for the Chargers coming off their loss to the Giants. 47.5 for the game total. V, you have a read on this one. Tell me which way you're going.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chargers to cover at home at -2.5. Again, let's start with some injuries. I think that's the big key in this game. Washington dealing with some of those. Jaden Daniels is back. He's officially been cleared to play in this game, and he will start. But it was reported earlier that he will be playing with a brace on his knee or his leg somewhere there on a lower body in this game. So I think his mobility is going to be severely limited in this game, and obviously we know that's a huge part of his game. They're going to be down a couple of receivers, and Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown. Sam Cosmi remains out on the offensive line. It just feels like this is going to be a game where the Commanders could struggle to run the ball, not only just because Jaden's limited, but the Chargers have a good defense, so they might have to become one-dimensional in terms of throwing the ball. They have not been great throwing the ball as it is, but again, now you take out some of your top passing options. It could get difficult, I feel like, for this Commanders offense. Again, we just haven't seen the same Jaden that we saw last year. We'll have to see how he comes back from the injury and see if he's even close to 100%. It doesn't seem like he is. So I think that's where my concern lies. I just don't feel like I can trust this Commanders offense right now as it's currently constructed with all the injuries. I know there's some injuries the Chargers are dealing with. You mentioned Joe Alt earlier. He has already been ruled out for this one. I don't know if this Washington defense is going to be able to take advantage of this Chargers offensive line like we saw with the Giants last week. They don't really have the guys like that, so I'm not super concerned about Herbert being under a ton of pressure in this one. And overall, I just don't think Washington's defense is particularly good. We saw them get shredded last week against Atlanta. They're allowing the sixth most passing yards per game in the league, and they only have one takeaway on the season. So there's not a whole lot that scares me about this Commanders defense. So getting less than 3 at home for a Chargers team where Justin Herbert is playing really well. Obviously, he had a couple picks last week. Those were a little bit fluky. One was a defensive lineman getting in. One was, I think, a little bit of a weird play, maybe a miscommunication with the receiver. And they were still very much in that game despite those 2 turnovers because you finally got the rushing game going with Amari Hampton, and also Herbert continues to be a really, really good quarterback. His connection with Quentin Johnston has been one of the bigger surprises of the NFL this season. I don't think anybody expected Johnston to be what he is. I drafted him in the first round in our dynasty league a couple of years ago, and I never expected him to be playable again. And here we are, 4 weeks in the season, and he is 100% going to be my starting lineup for as long as we can expect this to continue, which I don't know how long it will be, but for now, he is going to be in my starting lineup, and he's continuing to deliver. So, yeah, getting less than 3 at home, give me the Chargers here for sure.
And it's so funny because further proof that we live in the alternate universe, that this isn't the normal universe, like we're in the universe B, is that Quentin Johnson is playing out of his mind, and Lad McConkey has sort of been an afterthought in a lot of this. And I think part of that comes down to too is that Keenan Allen has been incredible. The chemistry with Herbert is still there, and they've played really, really well together. And I agree. I think this is a weird matchup for me, which was why I didn't necessarily put it on my card immediately. But I'm with you too. I think I'm going to probably end up going there. Is that what we've seen with Washington is they're not quite the team that we saw last season, where they were able to throw the ball around a little bit. They were able to stay ahead in the count. and they were able to, they couldn't really run the ball, but then it didn't really matter because they were supplementing it with the short passing game, and it made up for their defense being pretty atrocious. Well, this year, it's all about the running game. They run the ball pretty well, and they stop the run pretty well, and that's sort of where it goes. They have been absolutely horrendous in coverage, and I don't know, did we talk about the Atlanta game? Did we talk about Atlanta-Washington last week?
I don't think either of us had anything on that on our cards last week. I don't believe so.
Because I had a same game parlay for that one, actually, that I hit. It was 37-1 for just a Michael Penix bounce back, Drake London over 100. You know, it ended up hitting pretty soundly, and you know, the Falcons. I mean, like I said, they were coming off that game with Carolina, but the Chargers are in a similar situation where they're coming off a game that they lost that they probably shouldn't have. But again, it wasn't a 30-0 loss, and the Chargers were right there in that game, and with all their injuries. And I still think that they have a defense that's incredibly strong. If Washington gets behind in this one, it could be some trouble here. And when we see, like, I just actually pulled up DraftKings. I was going to look at some potential alts for Justin Herbert, and you know, books aren't buying the drop from losing to the Giants, because this Washington defense is not quite built up front to really, you know, capitalize on the potential pressure opportunity against a banged up Chargers offensive line. I mean, the Herbert's passing yardage line is still 265.5.
Yeah, that's
so
high.
It's high. So it's like, I mean, there's still confidence in him as a quarterback. Now, I know there's, you know, guys out there who continue to sell Justin Herbert as, you know, a fraud, and I don't see it. I don't understand. I mean, some of the talking heads, I mean, if you guys, you know, do a little searching on Twitter, you might be able to see some of the talking heads I'm talking about. But anyway, he's still a for real quarterback. This is still a really good defense, and I mean, they're banged up on the offensive line, but they got the running game going. Omarion Hampton had a really good game. And I think that if the Commanders fall behind in this one, it could be a tough look for them. So I'm right there with you. And that does it for our slate, V. You know, a little bit of a weird one. A lot of weird injuries, a lot of low totals, a lot of, you know, probably going to be some ugly overs. This is probably one of the weirder weeks of the NFL season that we're going to see, but definitely got some money making opportunities. It was a good time breaking down the slate for you. Like I said, we didn't cover every game, you guys. So if you have some games that you want to ask us about, head over to importantnonsense.com. Become a member, and you can get into our Discord. That's how you can ask us questions, get all of our plays from the week, and also ask the fantasy guys about your lineups. Ask them about your start sits, ask them about your trade requests, and of course, check out all the shows here on Important Nonsense. We have guys running all day. You can catch Jason before the Thursday night game, before Sunday, you know, Wednesday. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. So make sure you guys go check it out. We will be back next week for week 6, back same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And of course, I think I hit everything. I always forget. Yep. I always feel like I forget something at the end there, V. Do you have any parting words for the folks at home, V?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. You know, it's going to be maybe not the most exciting football we've ever seen, but it could be a lot of close games. There's a lot of 1-2 point spreads in this game, so we could be coming down to the wire. It could be very fun witching hours on Sunday. So still going to be good football, I think, all around. So enjoy the weekend, and yeah, same time next week.
It's going to be like that demonic witching hour from a few weeks ago.
Week 3. That one was too much, man. That was a little crazy.
My heart can't take all that. So until next time, everybody, good night and good luck.